And it looks like we are live. Hello, everybody. My name is Diane Rose Solomon. I'm the founder of Animal Magic Films. Here's my little banner for Animal Magic Films. And thank you for joining us for our third interview in the Science and Magic of the Human-Animal Bond interview series. We are exploring many of the ways that animals help people and people help animals. It's a both and conversation where we all benefit from this bond. Please welcome my guest today, Teresa Reid. Hi, Teresa.
Hi, Diane. Good to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. It's so nice to see you. I met Teresa, I don't remember which event. It was like 7 or 8 years ago. I can't remember if it was like a dog event where we were books in the middle, or I don't think it was Wine for Paws. I think we already knew each other by then.
Yeah, we knew each other by Wine for Paws. So
It wasn't the Century City one either. So I know we did a few book events together. So I don't remember which
Was it
one.
Women in the Pet Industry, maybe? It's been a while.
We already knew each other by then. We definitely knew each other by then.
Some event somewhere with books and dogs.
Books and dogs and the whole thing.
Yeah.
So let me read a little bit about you from your official bio, and then we'll talk a little bit, okay? So Teresa Reid is a dog fanatic. She really is a dog fanatic. She's an animal advocate, a lawyer, a speaker, a wine lover, and a breast cancer survivor. She splits her time between Riverside, California, and Paso, I say Robles, she says Robles, California, where she lives with her boyfriend, Chris, and their 3 couch-loving, bed-stealing, world-ruling, and yet totally adorable beagles, Ro, Percival, and Poppy. She is the author of #1 New York Times bestseller, The Dog Lived and So Will I, the award-winning sequel, The Dogs Were Rescued and So Was I, and her newest, Poppy in the Wild, A Lost Dog, 1,500 Acres of Wilderness, and the dogged determination that brought her home. The newest book, Poppy in the Wild, was just released on October 6th, right?
Yep.
I got it. I finished it. I loved it. And I have a lot of questions for you in general, but let's talk about this book first.
Sure.
The story is incredible. It is totally human-animal bond all the way. You mentioned at your book launch party about, the end, like we know, and you've mentioned, in your titles, that, she's here with us, right? You just mentioned you've got 3 dogs. One's named Poppy.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Oh, there's Poppy. Hi, cute girl.
We're going to give you proof that Poppy is here and live with us so that everything's okay.
Everything's okay.
Yeah, so this is Poppy.
What happened? I mean, you don't want to give away the whole story because we want people to read the book. The book is phenomenal, and I want to talk about how phenomenal it is. But tell us a little bit about why you wrote the book, what happened, and whatnot.
Yeah, so just a little background on it. Poppy was rescued by Beagle Freedom Project from the Chinese dog meat trade. So she was actually, she was flown over here. She arrived December 6th with, I think it was 12 other beagles. She's probably a Jack Russell Terrier Beagle mix, but flown over here with the 12 other dogs. And we picked her up on December 6th of 2018, and we were going to be fostering her. And she was, needless to say, practically feral. I mean, she wasn't raised as a pet. She didn't have a lot of good human interactions or anything like that. So she was a little bit of a work in progress. And after about 6 weeks, someone was interested in adopting her. Actually, someone who worked in my law office, and so I had been bringing Poppy to work with me. And so she did a overnight trial with Poppy. And when they took her out for a walk, Poppy, a thunderstorm broke out. Poppy got frightened and was able to twist out of her harness and ran. And she ran into, eventually, after crossing a bunch of busy streets, she ran into a wilderness park. And the reason we knew that is because she had a GPS tracker on her. So we could follow her for about the first 8 hours she was lost. So she ran into a wilderness park in the middle of a thunderstorm. And basically, we did everything wrong. Once I got the message, I panicked, and I did what I think most people would do, which is we went out into the wilderness park and started hiking through in the middle of this storm, calling out to her and trying to find this scared dog. And eventually that didn't work. And eventually somebody gave me the name of 2 different pet recovery specialist, which is not something I knew about. I didn't know there was such a thing as a pet recovery specialist, but I was desperate and I called them, and everything they told me to do worked and went against my instincts almost completely, but it worked. And we had sightings of her daily, enough to keep me going and enough to know they knew what they were doing. So and I kept saying to them, oh my God, this is such valuable information. You guys should write a book. You guys really should write a book. People should know about this. And finally, Mike, one of the recovery specialists, looked at me and he said, hey, lady, we don't write books. We find dogs. He didn't look at me because this was all by phone. He did it by phone. And I was like, oh, wait, I write. And in my defense, I was not getting a lot of sleep. So I was a little slow. And so I said to Chris, if this, my significant other who's in all of the books, I said, if this story has a happy ending as well, I think I have my third book. Because this is just information that people need. This information needs to get out there. And you saw Puppy a little bit ago, so it had a happy ending. We found her and she was no worse for the wear. So I was like, okay, I got to tell this story because I got to get this information out to people.
And it's an amazing story. And, I have to say, even though I knew the ending, right? I knew that you find her, right? But it didn't keep me, like, the entire time. I was like right there with you. Like, I think I have like a little bit of amnesia, a little bit when I'm reading. Like, I forget that I know that she's okay. And I'm reading it with me. I'm like, oh, I'm holding my breath. I'm like, oh my goodness, did that really just happen? Or is that going to happen? And also, you're so funny too, Teresa, because like, you talk to the reader, you're like, yeah, like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah, Teresa, I know what you mean. I'm like, wait. That was kind of rhetorical. Like, asking me that to answer her. She wrote it in the book, but I really get into your books like that. And you're so good at engaging the reader and making it interesting. And your books just flow and they fly by and they're total page turners. And you tell not only great stories, but really meaningful. And there's always a really good takeaway from it, even though it's about a woman and a dog, but there's deep takeaways. What inspired you to start writing in the first place? I mean, the first book of yours I read, as soon as I met you, The Dog Lived Until I. What was the inspiration? Like, what made you say, I'm going to write this book?
Yeah, so The Dog Lived Until I was originally actually a blog. So I've always been a writer. I've always loved to read, and I've always been a writer, but I always mostly read and wrote fiction. Mm-hmm. And then, as they say, life got stranger than fiction. Mm-hmm. And I got this Beagle, Seamus, who at maybe 2 years old got diagnosed with cancer. And they told me that with surgery and chemotherapy, he would live maybe a year. And he was only 2 years old. So I decided to fight it because I was kind of mad at a lot of things in life right around then as well. So I decided to fight it. And he survived actually 9 years. But 3 years after his diagnosis, he was still getting regular cancer follow-ups and whatnot. I got diagnosed with breast cancer. So it was sort of one of those, everything I needed to know to survive cancer, I learned from my Beagle moments. And the blog started because, frankly, I was tired of telling the same thing to everybody that I talked to, every family member or friend who wanted to know what was going on. I would have to repeat the same story over and over again. And so Chris came up with the idea of a blog. Now, this was in 2009. I was going through treatment in 2009. So blogs were kind of in their heyday. I mean, I know they're still around and I think they're even maybe having a renaissance, but this was really the heyday of blogs. And, but I wasn't really familiar with blogs or anything. I didn't follow any. I hadn't. So we started this blog and it got a lot of traction and I started getting a lot of followers and I got interviewed for different women's magazines about breast cancer bloggers and things like that. And because so many people were following, I felt like, well, maybe there's really a story here and maybe it could be more than a blog. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that happened that kind of inspired me to turn it into a book was like I said, I'm a big reader myself. So when I got diagnosed, I went straight to the bookstore to find a book to help me understand what I was going to go through. And I couldn't quite find what I was looking for. They were either really medical or someone died and they were kind of, sad, morose, and I didn't want either one of those things. Like the doctors were going to tell me the medical part, and I know people die from cancer. I didn't need to know that. I wanted to know what do you actually go through and what's helpful and something more kind of uplifting. So I did what they say you should do in the publishing world, which is write the book you wish was out there. So that's how The Dog Lived came about. And once it got translated into 7 different languages, and it hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. So it was kind of like, oh, maybe I'm onto something. Maybe nonfiction dog books is my lane. So
that's so great. I mean, I remember reading it, and I think I probably read it in 2013, right around when I met you, and 2013, 2014, and just thinking it was just such a beautiful story, and all of your sharing. And then I more recently read The Dogs Were Rescued.
Yeah.
And so was I. So tell us a little bit about that book.
So The Dogs Were Rescued and So Was I is a sequel to The Dog Lived. So what ended up happening was Seamus, the dog in the first book, he survived, and like I said, he lived another 9 years. And spoiler alert, I survived too.
Yeah,
you did meet Seamus, yeah. But eventually, he got diagnosed with yet another cancer, so totally unrelated to the first. And I thought, at that time, it was just me and Chris and Seamus, the Beagle, in our little household. And here we'd had 3 diagnoses of cancer, and that just struck me as too much cancer in one tiny little house. So I started doing some research about like what could we do to prevent it or to help in any way. So that led me into learning about like all the toxic household chemicals we all use so freely. And if you think about it, like whatever you use on your floor, the dog is down there licking the floor, grabbing food off the floor. At least Beagles are. And whatever we're spraying, and they're feeling that much more of. So we kind of started cleaning up that. And eventually that also led me to understanding more about our food system, our agricultural system, and what happens to the animals. And I'm a huge animal lover. So I turned vegan like overnight. Just learned enough and said, that's it. I'm not eating any more animal products. And did that. So The Dogs Were Rescued as kind of our journey through that. We ended up adopting Percival, who was rescued from an animal testing laboratory, also by Beagle Freedom Project. And then Daphne, who best we can tell, because you never really know with rescues, because she was found on the street. Pretty sure she was used by a backyard breeder and dumped somewhere, probably chased after the car, and she was shot with a BB gun. So she had like BBs throughout her body, and she turned out to have cancer too. So it was kind of it's the story of dealing with those 2 dogs and their trauma and getting them healthy and happy in the same way we were trying to do the same thing for ourselves. So.
Yeah. And, you just mentioned 2 things that I really latched onto in the book. One was about, using natural products in our home. And your point is so great. I mean, I have for a long time, but the way you explained it is like, I did it for like other reasons, or just sort of like, it just felt like the right thing to do. But yeah, the dogs lay on the floor. When you buy even new carpet, it's toxic. It has fumes, mattresses, everything is, and you're thinking about like our animals, us, laying on carpets, but they're laying on the floor. And to be using products like that. And then also, I totally understand vegan. As soon as I started to understand factory farming and the dairy industry, I said, I can't do this anymore either. As an animal lover, I couldn't separate. I love dogs and cats from, cows. And you had an experience at Farm Sanctuary and Gentle Barn. And I've been to Gentle Barn too. When you go up there and you brush a cow and you look in their eyes, you're like, you're cool. You're cool. And so
you're feeling
I was
something.
You're feeling something and they're feeling something, and there's a connection. And So I was right there with you. I totally saw your journey, and I had my own similar version of that journey to being vegan as well. So I understand that.
And that, what you said about, dogs and cats versus cows and pigs and whatnot, that's that is one of the reasons I wrote it too, is because my whole life I thought of myself as an animal lover, but then I had to really kind of take a deeper look at it and say, well, am I an animal lover or am I a dog and cat and hamster lover?
Right.
Like, what have I done that says animal lover? And so I wanted to expand that to all animals.
And you do it very nicely too, because, for me, I'm already vegan. So, not an issue there, but a lot of readers aren't. And, and so you're giving people an opportunity to understand a little bit more about it, and they can then choose to do with it what they will. But like you've drawn the line in the sand and said, this is where I stand on this. And you did it very nicely so that it's invitational and instructive, rather than, beating somebody over a head.
I mean, I kind of feel like do what you can do, what you're willing to do. Every little bit is going to help, and, Chris is not a vegan. He was not a vegan when we met, neither was I, and he hasn't become vegan. And sometimes people will be like, well, oh my God, how can you, well, he's a lot more vegan by being with me than he would be if I said, oh, I can't be with you, you're on your own. He'd be eating steaks and whatnot nightly. But, so he's eating a lot more vegan. He does eat vegan with me, and our meals that we eat together are vegan. It's just he'll eat non-vegan things when he's out on his own, and probably sneaks out occasionally to do that. But I'm not here to do people. I just want people to understand the facts and make their own choices and really think about what it means to be an animal lover.
That's great. That's great. So, tell me, how do your books help people? I know we've mentioned this a little bit, but just, in terms of answering the human-animal bond, how do your books help people?
Well, like the first one, The Dog Lived, I really, I did want to help anybody who either got a cancer diagnosis or had somebody close to them get a cancer diagnosis. I wanted people to understand what you go through when you go through cancer treatment, because it sounds funny, but I think that gets brushed over a lot, like the day-to-day details of it. Like everybody knows, okay, yeah, you get chemotherapy and you probably get nauseous and sick. There's a lot more that goes on. And I wanted to be able to do it in a way that wouldn't scare people off and would be inspirational and helpful, and just helpful. And on that book, most often when I hear from somebody who is obviously somebody who's gone through cancer themselves, that always makes me feel good if it helped them through it. But also if it's a caretaker who says, gosh, or a family member who says, I had no idea until I read your book what they were going through. And that's helpful. And I think the dog, just having dogs in the book, it makes it more, I don't know, approachable. Because people love a good dog story with a happy ending. And I learned so much from the dogs that's how I end up sharing. It's kind of sort of from a dog's point of view on both of them. So the dogs were rescued, like we just talked about. It was my journey, and I wanted to share it because I felt like there were a lot of people out there like me who probably didn't know these things and maybe should know these things or hadn't thought about it in that way. And I think when you think about, I love my dog and this is my dog and I'm doing it, maybe you can extend that to other animals. So, and Poppy in the Wild is probably the most intentionally instructive book, because like I said, everything I learned about how you find a lost dog just blew my mind. I was like, I had no idea. And I was so wrong. I was doing everything wrong. Maybe not everything, but pretty close. And luckily they got me corrected in no time. And I just really felt like this is valuable information. This is based on the behavior of animals and what these people have studied and what they've come to understand about what happens when a dog, they cats too, but mostly dogs. Cats tend to find their way back pretty quickly. So I just felt like I really want to get this word out there. So that's why there's an appendix in the back of the book with all the doggone helpful tips on what to do when your dog's gone. Even, what kind of a flyer to make and not make, like don't put reward on there. you think that, oh, you're going to get more people helping, but you're going to get bad actors. You're going to get people who are only there for the money. They're going to chase the dog, and they're going to chase it into a dangerous situation, like the middle of a street or a pack of coyotes. Or you're going to get bad information. You're going to get people calling saying, oh yeah, I saw the dog on blah, blah, blah corner, in the hopes that if you find the dog there, they get a reward. So I was like, oh yeah, that all makes sense. Why offer a reward? Good people who love dogs and love animals and are going to help, they're going to help whether there's a reward on the flyer or not. So,
and I'm not going to give away the ending, but I know as an enticement for people to read it, what Teresa just said, it's just, people are amazing. Real animal lovers are amazing, and will do things that, that are a cut above what, everybody that was helping you, the whole team, everybody, it was just the whole way everything came together. It was an amazing story to watch. And I love that you added that appendix. I like that it's doggone,
Yeah. The appendix was important to me, because that's if your dog were lost, you're not going to pick up the book and be reading the whole book to figure out. You're going to need to go to something quickly. I mean, hopefully the story and what I went through stays with someone, but then you have the appendix to go to be like, this is what I need to do. It even has the phone numbers in there for the 2 pet recovery specialists, because they worked entirely by phone. They were not out in the field with me. They were not at the wilderness park. They looked at the wilderness park from a satellite map to be able to figure out what the terrain was like and where the houses were. And based on our sightings of Poppy, where she was likely to settle down. And they were absolutely right on everything. So they work by phone. And this also amazes me, for free and by phone and all over the place. One of them just helped somebody. I'm up here in Paso Robles right now. And the 2 towns over is a little town called Atascadero, and somebody's golden doodle went missing, and they were put in touch with Babs, one of the pet recovery specialists, and she helped them find it. I think it was about a week that the dog was missing, and she helped them find it just by phone. She's down in San Diego. If you're not in California, that's 300 miles away.
No, it's remarkable. Really, really amazing. The whole story is incredible. And Poppy was missing for 5 days, so you can sympathize with somebody who was missing their dog for a week, or we hear other stories where people are missing their dog for months or even years too. And
and sometimes they will say, Babs and Mike, again, pet recovery specialists, they've said that it is, again, this is counterintuitive, that sometimes the longer a dog's missing, the better its chances are, because in the initial days, the dog might be frightened and hiding. And so you're not going to find it right away. And then when it's out and about, it starts to settle into a pattern, and it understands its own terrain better, and it's making do. It's adjusting to its new life. So it's not going to be coyote bait, as people keep telling us. And they'll settle in, and you'll be able to find them, because eventually they'll settle into a pattern. So just because they're gone for a long time doesn't mean they're gone.
Yeah. Amazing. So that was a really good nugget about how your books help people, and how do your books help animals?
How do my books help animals? Well, hopefully, again, Poppy in the Wild being the most obvious one, hopefully it can help people to get their dogs back home, which helps the animals. Assuming we all believe being home is better than being out in a wilderness park or running loose on the streets. Hopefully that's how it helps the animals. And, the dogs were rescued was meant to help, maybe not so much dogs and cats as, farm animals. Animals we think of as food or food products. If people read it and think about it, they'll probably find that they're going to be eating a lot less animal and animal products. If I can say this myself, it's not preachy. It's not, this is what you must do, because it's not, I wasn't born a vegan. I had to go on that journey myself. So hopefully that helps those animals. And the dog was, when Seamus got diagnosed, which was 2005, I guess, 2005 or 6, 2006 it would have been, when Seamus got diagnosed. I didn't know much about canine cancer. I didn't know that it was as common in dogs as it was, and certainly as it's becoming, again, for all the reasons we talked about, the toxins in our household and the diets we're feeding our dogs and whatnot. So I wanted to write it to help people go through that experience as well. If your dog ever got diagnosed, what I say this to anybody, any being that gets diagnosed with cancer. I'm a big believer in second opinions too, and that goes for your dog as well. So I think just helping people get through the experience and understand it, that ends up helping the dogs as well, especially if we can stay calm or calmer. Calm might be too much to ask when your dog gets diagnosed, but because they sense what we're going through, So.
Of course. Yeah. It's like we want to help them, but they need to help us so that we can help them.
Right. Have to be strong for them. And yeah.
So our world is kind of crazy right now. And, how do your books help the world become a more compassionate place?
Well, I think if we're more compassionate to animals, it's not that big of a step to be more compassionate to humans, right? Although personally, I find it easier to be more compassionate to animals than humans. So, but trying.
You're getting there. You're getting there.
Yeah. And and that is ultimately, I think, what the books are about is compassion for these animals, again, all animals. But and Poppy in the Wild, one of the things they kept saying to me, the pet recovery specialist kept saying, was it's about you need to be thinking like the dog. It's about the dog's instincts and what the dog's going to do. And I remember thinking, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. I've been coming at this from my own, here's what I need to do. Here's what makes sense to me, rather than stopping and thinking, but what does the dog think? What's the dog's perspective on this? And I realized even then, and I think I said something to them then, that, oh, well, that's an interesting lesson to learn in these times. Try thinking about it from somebody else's point of view.
Yeah.
Easier said than done in this particular political environment, but it's a good thing to think about.
It's a good thing to think about.
Yeah.
So do you have anything else that any favorite stories or anything else that you learned from your experiences that you would like to share?
Well, this isn't profound or anything. I was just going to mention, because you reminded me of it when we were talking about not giving away the ending of the book. So all three of my books give away, in a broad sense, the ending. You know that all of the dogs live. That Poppy gets found. So the only interesting part is or the only unknown part is the how in the book. And I was at a book conference or writers. No, it was Book Expo in New York a few years back, and I had the pleasure of hearing John Irving speak. And he talked about, he's one of my favorite authors, and he talked about how he always gives away the endings in the beginning as well. And I was like, oh, I'm following in the footsteps of a master. It's okay.
You're in good company.
Yeah, I'm in good company. It's okay to give away the ending. But I think he doesn't write dog books. I think it's particularly true for a dog book, which goes to show you how much people really love their dogs. We don't want to read books if the dog's going to die or be harmed. I mean, I can't even watch cartoons if I think something's going to happen to the dog.
I know. My kids it's just a cartoon, or I'm like, it doesn't matter. I can't watch it.
Yeah, it's been a long running joke with us, and I think I even mentioned it in the first book. When Chris and I were first dating, he knew that I loved beagles, and so we were going to watch the movie Underdog, because it's a cartoon, but it's a beagle. But it starts out, the dog is in a laboratory and they're going to do something to it. So I was like, nope, done, can't watch it. And he was looking at me like, it's a cartoon. Nope, doesn't matter. They're going to harm the dog. So I think that says a lot. I mean, well, that says a lot about me and my compassion for animals, but I think people in general, there must be a particular attachment with dogs that we can't read books if they're going to be harmed or die. So I like to reassure everyone that there is happy ending. That is, I write about traumas that happen to me and my dogs, but they do have happy endings. So I think that's what we all need right now, is good adventurous stories with happy endings.
Great. Wonderful. Well, your most recent book is Poppy in the Wild. Where can you find Poppy in the Wild?
There it is.
Oh, there's the
Isn't she
cover.
cute? I happen to love this cover.
It's a great cover.
And that is actually her. So it's anywhere books are sold. My local independent bookstore is Cellar Door Books in Riverside, and if you want to order through them, you can put a little note in, and I will personalize it. I will be down there next week signing her stock, so I can personalize and Poppy photographs them. We have a little paw print stamp of hers, so she photographs them. They actually have all of my books there as well. So other than that, Amazon or bookshop.org actually supports independent bookstores, which is important right now. So any of those.
And I will put a link in underneath, in Facebook or and YouTube when it gets here there, and in my website, I will make sure that the link to Cellar Door Bookstore, right to the book. Yeah.
That first of all, wanted the equal time. So
yeah. And the first book, you want to show us the cover for that one too? The dog lives, and so will I. Wonderful. I loved all of your books so much. Are you working on anything else right now?
I actually started during the initial phases of shelter at home. I actually started working on a novel. So I decided to go back to fiction, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. There is a dog in it, but I wouldn't call it a dog book. There's 2 dogs in it. Just kind of for fun, and it's been a nice relief. I like having a world where I can control everything. So.
That's probably good right now.
Yes, exactly.
Bring us all into that world, Teresa.
Right.
I can't wait to read that when it's ready.
Thanks.
It's been such a delight.
Thank you.
I haven't seen you in so long, and been reading your books, and it's been really delightful. So thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thanks. Good to see you again too. This is how we see people now. So good hanging out.
So before we say our last goodbye, I just have a few quick announcements. Please, if you have not yet joined my community, there we go, animalmagicfilms.com, so you can learn about upcoming films. We got a new one coming out in a few weeks and other news that's going on. If you are not yet a member of my Facebook group, The Science and Magic of the Human-Animal Bond, you may join that. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can please subscribe on Animal Magic Films. And if you have a story that you would like to include on my website or maybe potentially be interviewed here, you can email me at diane@animalmagicfilms.com. So thank you again, Teresa. This was such a treat for me to be able to speak with you. I loved your book so much. And thank you, everybody who's joined us today. We will not be back here for an interview next Tuesday, November 3rd, because it's Election Day in the United States. Everybody should be out and voting. And we will be back here on Tuesday, November 10th at 2 o'clock p.m. So thanks again, Teresa. Great to see you.
Thanks.
All right, take care. Bye-bye, everybody.